So who can tell me what gender this person is?
Male.
How did you ever guess that? Because you're a human and you know things before you get in anatomy class. How amazing is that, that you know things? According to what we did during the endocrine system, what is the primary reproductive organ of the male? Testes. Exactly. Why are the testes considered primary reproductive organs? Because they are what produces the sperm. Okay? They produce the reproductive cell. So they are the primary reproductive organs. Probably if you talk to your friends about the reproductive system and you're talking about the male, I'm guessing that the testes aren't the number one organ that you've discussed. Yes or no? Nobody wants to talk right now. That's okay. Okay, everybody, on 3. Name this organ. 1, 2, 3. Oh, what is that? Sorry, you guys at home can't tell. So.
Bladder? Oh, I see.
Yeah, see, I was blocking. Sorry, my hand was blocking. That's the bladder. So let's start there. On our markup, you know how we do things in here? Let's mark it up. Now, I like to begin with no labels. Okay? We'll do the same for female after the break. No labels. And then there's a few pictures where I will show you some labels as well. But just like when we did respiratory, it works really well on this to learn it without labels. Because, here's why, I'll just show you. If I can get, no, I don't want to go slow. So we'll see it later. Now, when you look at the labeled version of the PowerPoint, you'll see that they call it the urinary bladder. I would never need you to tell me urinary bladder. You know that is the bladder, right? We have one other bladder we learned that was green, gallbladder, but you're always going to call that one the gallbladder, so we don't need to tag this one, okay? If you choose to say urinary bladder, that's fine, but please know you don't have to do that. All right. Next thing. To me, this is very important that you understand. When you look right here, right there, put a little dot on it. What kind of structure or what kind of tissue, what kind of thing do you think that is? It's bone. It's bone. So now that you know that, look at that. You should be able to tell that the inside where I put the dot, you might think back and remember, that's spongy bone. It's got lots of pores in it. And the thicker part just outside of that is compact bone. They did a great job of drawing that. But on the labels, they kind of messed up, especially on the female. They misnamed it when we get to that. That's another reason I like to write things in for you instead of using some of their labels. This bone is called. So you'll notice what I'm going to do. I want you to know it's bone. And because of how fast A&P1 was, some people may not remember. If you look at the label and it says pubis, because that's what it says on the label, and that is correct, by the way. It's not wrong. But because you had A&P1 so fast, and because bones were very glossed over, you may not actually remember that the pubis is the pubic bone. So pubic bone is the better name to help you lock that in. All right? There's the rectum right there. That was something from our digestive system. All right? And that's the rectum back there. What is the opening right here? Very good. That's the anus. Okay? See this membrane on top of the bladder? That membrane actually does this. Goes like that, comes here, goes like that. And that membrane lines your entire abdomen, your abdominal cavity. If you're all caught up on the lectures, you've heard of it from the digestive lectures. If you're still catching up on that, maybe you haven't heard the name for this yet. The peritoneum. That is the peritoneum. This is an eye. I don't know. When I look there, I don't see the dot. Up there, I see it pretty well. The peritoneum is your abdominal membrane. Now, the reality is there is a visceral and a parietal. This is the parietal because it lines the body wall. But for me on this test, you don't have to put that. Just call it the peritoneum and you'll be okay. Remember, peritoneum is a membrane, just like the pleura was a membrane. Anybody remember what kind of tissue the pleura were? I know that was a whole week and a half ago. The visceral pleura, parietal pleura. You may want to look that up because it might show up on your lab test. Pardon? Oh yeah, simple squamous epithelium. Y'all are right. That's it. They gave you the answer. Simple squamous epithelium. Okay. Right here. So you can see that's between the testes and the anus. That area of the body has a name. That external tissue right there. For males and females, they use the same name. Okay, and that is commonly pronounced two ways: perineum or perineum. Doesn't matter to me how you pronounce it. That is that part of the body for the male behind the scrotum, behind the testes, and leading up to the anus right there. So everybody knows what this is, right? What's that? Yeah. And right here, scrotum. And I think we've done a pretty good job of marking it up right there. I could put a couple other things, but they get close to other stuff. So, yeah. Maybe one more thing. Let me do one more. Anybody know what that is? What is the urethra? Show it to you. It's a tube. It's a tube. What is it coming out of? The bladder. Okay, so that is the tube that leaves the bladder that is carrying urine, but also, note, there's some other tubes that attach to it. It also carries semen. We'll talk about that later. So the urethra is a tube. In a male, it carries urine and semen, both. Okay, both. And no, I'm going to do those separate. I think I can get one more thing on here. I'll be greedy. Right here, that everybody knows, hopefully, this is the penis. Okay, what you may not know, so is this back here. Okay, everything in blue there, everything in blue is the penis. So a significant amount of the penis is on the inside. It goes up behind the pubic bone and almost all the way to the anus. In fact, on the side, it goes further than this. This is a midline cut. So a significant portion of the penis is on the inside. I'm not gonna have you label penis right here, okay? What I am going to have you label is down here. There is tissue that covers the tip of the penis. It's on the outside of it, okay? It looks like skin, but it has an inside portion that is more like mucus, not mucus, that's the wrong word, but more like instead of the outside skin, more like the skin on the inside of your cheek, which we wouldn't call skin, we would call a mucous membrane. So that's why I use that. So it's going to be a little bit softer than most. And this is AMP, so we have to give it a fancy name. The common name is the foreskin, but the fancy name is the prepuce, okay? The prepuce or foreskin. So there's picture number 1.
How do you pronounce it?
That's okay. A lot of people, no, a lot of people do. I've heard teachers say that. Okay, so don't worry about it. Yeah, there's a lot of things that.
Same in biology, the pronunciations between British and
See, and
so
that's
many different
right.
pronunciations.
Right. Yeah, and I was lucky in my program. I had teachers from lots of different countries, so I heard tons of different pronunciations. It's cool. Yeah. So let's go back to kind of this area right here. Inside of the foreskin, we have the tip or the end of the penis. Who wants to tell me what the common name for that is? What do you call the tip of the penis? What do you call it something? Nobody knows? No. That's the prepuce is the skin on the outside of it. You move that skin back and you see the tip. What's the tip called? I'm not asking you if you've seen the tip. It don't matter. Okay, that's up to you. Common. You're gonna tell somebody, oh, I see your glands. That's fancy. What's that? What's the tip called? Come on, y'all. The head. Thank you. The head. It's the head. Okay, the head of the penis. But this is A and P. So on the test, you ain't gonna get no credit if you call it the head. Here's what it is. The glands. You got it right, but I didn't want that term. I was wanting the common name so everybody would know what we're talking about. Because if I just go, oh, here's the glands, people are like, wait, I don't know which part you mean. Okay. Notice there is no D in that word. It is not a gland. Glands is the A&P term for the head of the penis, the tip of the penis. Okay. All the rest of this would be the shaft. That's not going to be on the test, so I'm not going to write it up there. Okay. And then back here, look, this part that is inside, internal, up above the perineum, that is called the bulb. Yep, the bulb. Let me make that better. So I can put the B where it needs to be. That's the bulb. Okay. Right there. On the testes, I told you at some point I would do that. Testes not a real word. It's what we make singular from the plural testes. It's really the testis. So on this testis, you see this thing that looks like a little caterpillar? It is not a caterpillar, trust me. It is a series of tubes that we will see cut open a little bit later. It is called, look at that crazy spelling, the Epididymis. That is the epididymis. All right. The you know this from what we've done before. I will still show you later and teach this again later. But inside the testes, remember we have seminiferous tubules. There's about 900 of them, and that's where the sperm is made. And we saw that in the endocrine system. So there's about 900 coiled up tubes in here. And these tubes, what they do is they leave the testes, connect with us, and then some tubes go up into the epididymis. So that's how the sperm leaves. It gets out of the testes and it goes into the epididymis. And the epididymis curves, it goes around the testis, and it comes up here. And I'll have another picture of it that will show you it's kind of curly in there until it gets about right here and it straightens out. And then that tube gets a new name. Right there. They change the name of it. As it comes off the testes, there's a little part of it still, and then as it really gets straight, you can see it. The coolest thing about dissecting cats when we did do that, is you could totally see that this is called a vas deferens. Okay, you can see where the epididymis went, and then it stopped and it went straight. And you can see the exact second it became the vas. Yeah, no problem. The other cool thing was the omentum. You could see the greater omentum. That was so neat. Yeah. So this tube comes out. What's it going to carry? So I just want to make sure that, yes, sperm is in there, but we want to be appropriate with our wording. That fluid is called semen. Sperm is in there, but the fluid we're going to refer to as semen. Okay? And notice where this tube goes. Over, what's it going over? The bladder, very good. And look, it comes behind this here and goes right there. Okay? But I want you to see this. That part in here, going to have a different name. That little tube's going to get a different name. So I'm taking off the highlight. I wanted you to see where it goes, but that last little bit gets a different name. So there's our vas deferens. Hey, they can go in and cut that, right? And what's that procedure called? Vasectomy. Hey, back in the day, you know, I went to college in Dallas, and every time I would drive home, there were always billboards on the highway. I don't see many anymore, but it was microsurgical vasectomy reversal. Because there's always somebody that had a vasectomy that wants to reverse it. See, when they do a vasectomy, they come in here in the scrotum, and they cut out a little portion of that tube, but they don't take the whole tube out. So it's sitting there, and now they're so good at surgery that what they can do is they can reattach them and clean them out, and they can correct that procedure. It doesn't always work because some people get a ton of scar tissue, but most of the time that would work, and that would work pretty well. The body is so crazy though, that sometimes they'll do a vasectomy and it will find its way back together and attach, and somebody will have a kid after they had a vasectomy. It is very rare. It is very rare. It is very not cool unless you're that kid and you have a good life. But but it is certainly not what anybody expects. Okay, very rare. And I would say now in modern medicine, you know, the last 10 years, it's less rare than it used to be because they're getting better at sealing off the ends, cauterizing, doing all that stuff. Okay. All right. But you know, life force is strong. Some little things want to be born somehow. They push. Hey, what's the name of the tube that goes into the bladder? Let me rephrase that. Coming down from the kidney to right there. Well, let's be very careful how we pronounce it, okay? Because it's very close to urethra. So here's the urethra. I'm going to do this one in black to help it stand out. Right? That was called the urethra. How many urethras typical male have? One. How many penises the average male have? One. Could you have two? Guys, the body develops crazy. You could have two. It's not going to be common, but every once in a while, things happen. This tube goes up into the bladder. What's in the bladder? Yeah, I wanted you to say pee-pee, but that's okay. You can say urine. You can be official. Where's the urine come from? It comes from the kidney. And the way that it gets into the bladder is through this tube right here. Here's its name. The ureter. The ureter. How many kidneys do most people have? So how many ureters should we have? Two. One coming down from each kidney. Okay. We will, next week, on Monday, I will do the urinary lab with you. I like to do the reproductive lab first. And when we do the urinary lab on Monday, we will see this even better. Okay, this part even better. Okay, semen is the male fluid, the male reproductive fluid. What tube does it leave the body through? Very good. Urethra. Okay. But where does that semen come from? So it comes from a whole series of glands. It comes from many glands. We just learned that some of it's coming from the testes, right? We saw it in the vas deferens. But most of the semen is made right there. Right there. That little gland in front of the vas deferens right there, or we could say up beside the backside of the bladder, that is called the seminal vesicle. And I'm giving you average numbers. It varies. Everybody's different, but this is the number they like to give. Notice also, when you see the bladder's not cut. That means this gland is on the right side of the bladder, so there's one on the left. So there's two of these. Okay, there are definitely two of those. And together, the two of those, on average, produce about 60% of the volume of semen. Okay, about 60%. Under the bladder right here, there is one gland right in the middle. Hopefully you can tell that it was cut there. And this is probably the most commonly healthcare talked about gland for male reproductive health. So do you know what it is now based on that phrase? Yes. That is the prostate gland, or simply prostate is fine. Okay. It is smaller than the bladder most of the time. Okay. As guys age, it's very common for it to enlarge. Its job with regard to semen is to produce about 30%. Makes about 30% of the semen. Very important gland. Now the lecture will go more in depth about semen. That body fluid is pretty fascinating because it contains a lot of chemicals. A lot of chemicals. Some of the chemicals nourish the sperm, provide ATP for the sperm. By the way, what I'm telling you now is not lab tests. Okay, this will be covered in the lecture, so you don't have to write it down. There's a chemical in semen that the job is to dilate the cervix of a female. Wow. That means that the male has a fluid that when it gets into the female, it causes the uterus, in case you don't know, the cervix is the opening of the uterus, the tip of the uterus, causes it to open up to let the sperm in. So that's pretty cool. The body develops some really Really neat things. Next, this little tiny looking gland right there. Notice it is intact and it is on the right. So once again, like the seminal vesicles, there's two of these. Notice where it is. It's just above the bulb, and its little tube attaches to this. What was this tube? Urethra. So look at the name that they give this. They call it the bulbourethral gland. The bulbourethral gland. You may have heard them called Cowper's glands too.
Yeah, that's right. Oh
That's
my
the
gosh, flashback.
that's the bulbourethral gland right there. So it commonly produces the least amount of semen. I'm not going to be exact on this because this one seems to be very highly variable from person to person, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 10%. And we're not trying to be exact here. I may ask you though, what's the percentage of seminal vesicles? What's the percentage of semen for the prostate? Or what's the percentage for bulbo? And those are the numbers I would like you to give me, okay? Don't be silly and put 59%. I'll be silly and take a point away, all right? There's also some semen that comes from the tubes in the testes, the epididymis, and the vas. But collectively, that's just a few percent. So I'm not going to ask you about that percent, okay? But this one's very important. Right, that's where the sperm come from. I am not telling you to label that the sperm. Please don't label that the sperm on the test, okay? Sperm are produced here, right? So let me be clear about that. Made here. What gland is that? Yeah, testes. The testes. Sperm. Make up about 1% of the semen. Sperm only make up about 1% of the semen. So if you've ever been in a sexual situation with a male and you've seen what comes out of a male, that volume of fluid varies from person to person, varies within the same person from time to time, lots of different factors. But the point is this, that on average, whatever volume comes out, less than usually 1% of it is actually sperm cells. Most of it is the fluid from these glands. And that fluid serves a great purpose. It helps the sperm get where it wants to go. And realistically, that is about fertilizing the egg. That's what sperm are created to do, to go find the egg and fertilize the egg, okay? This is a thing that kind of blows people's minds, because some people call that whole fluid sperm. Oh, look, there's the sperm. There it is. Nope. Sperm are the smallest cells in the human body. You could look at that fluid as close as you want to with the naked eye. You would never see a sperm cell. They are invisible to the naked eye. They are too small. They are too small. All right, there's picture 2. You know what happens when you have to go back 8 weeks to look at your pictures? You see your spring break.
We got a big break coming.
Yeah.
The biggest break.
The biggest break.
I'm done with this BS.
Man. It's okay. I think of anybody I understand. What? I didn't take my reproductive pictures last time? What? Well, there's not that many. It doesn't matter. What do you think this is? A side. Perfect. That is your sphincter. What did we call the sphincter right here? Which anal sphincter? Notice it's outside. External. There you go. So that is the external anal sphincter. Okay. I don't think that'll be on the test, but I like to get that in your mind to remind you of digestive. Okay. At least not on the reproductive picture. And then under the prostate, this is really pretty important. You see this little red tissue right here that looks like it's going from about right where the anal canal stops and it becomes the rectum up to the pubic bone, okay? What you can't see is that little red sling right there doesn't just go front to back, it goes side to side and attaches places too. I'm going to highlight it, or actually I'm going to mark around it in yellow right here. So there it is, inside of that, okay? Males and females both have this group of muscles, very important. Commonly, you may hear it called the pelvic floor, but its fancy name is the urogenital diaphragm. Very important muscles for reproductive health for males and females. You may have heard of, most people pronounce them Kegels. The doctor's name was actually Kegel. So, but Kegel exercises work these muscles, okay, if you've ever heard of those. So there's the urogenital diaphragm. By the way, it's not pure just muscles. There are connective tissues associated with them as well, okay, the urogenital diaphragm. Notice in the male, it's above the bulb. In the female, it will also be above the perineum right there. You'll see that as well. So what do you think that is? Here's our urethra. Here's our ureter. What's this? Testes. What's this? Epididymis. What's that? What's that tube? There we go. Vas deferens. Even publishers that spend millions of dollars do pictures that look silly. This is supposed to be the vas deferens on the other side. If this one is so low, why is that one hanging out in the middle of the abdomen? It's terrible, but that's what it's supposed to be. I won't be asking you that. Here's the other reason I point that out. When we look at the picture of the female, that's going to be oriented the same way with the pubic bone and everything, that is going to look identical. They used the exact same little clip art piece and they plugged it into the female picture. So keep that in mind. We're going to see this in the female. That to me is silly, but it's there. Okay. How about here? The opening of the urethra has a name. Now there's two words we could put here and be correct. Orifice is any opening. So they very commonly call it an orifice. If you're looking at the labeled PowerPoints, you'll see that. But does anybody remember from last Monday when we did the nose, in the nose canal, there were 3 little canals on each side? What did we call those openings, canals on each side of the nose? Meatus. And this opening in the male and sometimes in the female is commonly called a meatus, where the urethra opens. So you can call it external urethral orifice, which you'll see in the labeled version, or external urethral meatus. I'm okay with both of those. Most of the structures that you need to know, we have labeled now. Now, funny thing, the picture they use for the female is oriented just like this, right? I mentioned that. They even use a little bit of the same clip art. So when we get to the female, it's going to be easier for you to learn this picture because you've already been staring at this picture for so long. So males and females, what you may not know, we all develop, our reproductive systems develop from the exact same structures. See, when you're a little embryo and you're growing and you're less than 2 weeks old, you're male or female, the only way they know the difference is by your genetic code. What your cells are doing look exactly the same at that point. And something happens around about day 16, where if the genetic code is male, there's a different surge of chemicals that cause the embryo to develop as a male. And if it doesn't happen, the base human pattern is to actually develop as a female. Okay? So what we're looking at is the abnormal. You have to have a little surge of chemicals to develop as a male, and base human is female. Just keep that in mind. It's kind of interesting. Okay, what do they call it when they cut that off? Removal of the foreskin is called circumcision, okay? That is an important thing to know, what that procedure is called. What percentage of baby boys in Texas are circumcised? So current babies. It's about 50. Back in the day, it was super high. As time moves on, there's typically fewer and fewer circumcisions. What percentage of baby boys born in California are circumcised? About 30% now, okay? What percentage of babies in England are circumcised? Like 2%, like 2%, okay? So something, depending on your culture, depending on where you're from, depending upon religion, depending upon other factors, it may be very common for your cohort to be circumcised, or it may be very common for it to not. You guys are going into healthcare, so to me, it's very important for you to understand something. If it were medically necessary, England couldn't have only 2%. If there was a real important medical reason to circumcise everybody, you can't have a country that doesn't do it, because you would hear on the news, penis problems in England. Oh my God, you know, they're not circumcising and the penises are falling off, or they're getting penis cancer, or all these things, right? You don't hear that because it doesn't happen, okay? The average human with a penis, if they're not circumcised, can take care of it just fine. And for most of their life, they won't have a problem, okay? But hey, can you get ingrown toenails? Yes. Can you have diabetes and get an ingrown toenail and then have to have your foot cut off? Yep. Can you have a foreskin and get an infection and it become a problem? Yep. But I don't know We don't do genetic testing and say you're likely to get diabetes. Let's just take your feet off when you're a baby, okay? Every body part, I want to make sure you guys understand this. Humans are not born with a body part that has no function. We may not know and understand the function yet. And certainly you may not need it to live, right? You can take a kidney out and you can live just fine. You can take a gallbladder out and you can just live just fine. You can take your brain out and you ain't living. You can cut off your whole penis at birth and you can live just fine. Until people start telling you what it was for and you get mad at them. But the whole point is there's parts we can live with and parts we can't live with. You as going into healthcare needs to understand you're going to see patients that have all kinds of ideas and beliefs and thought processes. And part of working in healthcare is to educate, but another part is to always respect the human in front of you. Always respect the human in front of you. So you may work in a clinic with babies where they circumcise a lot or where they almost don't. But guarantee you, if you work in that environment, you're going to have people come in that want to do the exact opposite of what that doctor usually does. And it's very important that you respect their wishes and discuss things with them while potentially trying to educate. But sometimes you have to educate your healthcare clinic because there's doctors that think you're supposed to circumcise every baby still. And they don't think about the fact that around the world, that's not necessarily so common anymore, okay? Let's see, what else? Oh, about the vas deferens. This is important about the vas deferens here. By the way, when we see this later, it's not alone. There's blood vessels, nerves, and lymphatics with that tube, okay? Because the testes are alive. So we're going to see another picture that shows that. But look where that tube goes. That goes from down around the testes. Where does it go compared to the pubic bone? Front or back? Here's the bone. Front. Guys, there you have a pubic bone right here. Your cord that carries your sperm, semen, goes in front of that. If you get an injury, if you get hit right here with something very hard, it could push that against the bone and split it open. Pubic bone injuries are so significant because they can impact your reproductive health. There are blood vessels and nerves there too. Those can get severed also. Crushing injuries right here, big deal. People don't think about this. We don't know until you got in this class. You probably never knew this. Sperm, okay, let's think about the reproductive act. A guy is going to deposit some sperm, some semen, right? Most people think this. There it goes. Goes from the testes right in the penis and out. Nuh-uh, watch this. Here's where it goes. That's its journey. Are you kidding me? It has to go up in the body, over the top of the bladder, come out with those glands, meet the urethra, then go to the bulb of the penis before it gets in the penis and goes out. Okay? That's a crazy journey. Last thing before we can change the picture. That little part of the tube right there. That's in the prostate, and it's where the seminal vesicles and the vas deferens come together and where the semen finds its way to the urethra. That little tube right there is named after the process. Ejaculatory duct. That is called the ejaculatory duct. So finally made it. We're done with this picture. So those are the things that you might be asked on this picture to label on the test. Okay, how many people think that thing at the bottom looks like a little monkey? Does it look like an alien? What does it look like? You see it?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the two eyes.
It's like a South Park character.
It's a South, that is exactly what it is. It's from South Park. There's the eyes, there's the mouth. Let's put a little hat on. Just kidding. What is that? That's the penis. Cut. So it's facing forward. They cut it in the shaft, not the head, not the glands. Okay. So you could see what's in there. What you need to know, there is no bone in there. Okay? There is no bone in there. An erection, the firmness of the penis, comes from blood filling up those two things that look like the eyes. Those are long columns of very tight fibrous connective tissue that fill up with blood. Actually, the tight fibrous connective tissue is on the outside. This stuff is not tight and fibrous. It's very porous and fills up with blood. So it kind of blows up like a balloon, except it's full of fluid. Those two that look like the eyes, those two columns, are called the corpora cavernosa. Okay. The urethra is right there. Actually, you know what? I'm going to label it below instead of there. It'll be easier for what I know I need to do. And that little blue spongy tissue around the urethra is there to protect the urethra, because during reproduction, semen needs to leave. If that gets completely pinched off, the semen aren't going to get out, okay? So this also engorges with blood and swells up, and it helps to keep the urethra open. It protects the urethra and helps to keep it open. This little single column that looks like the mouth is called the corpus spongiosum. The corpus spongiosum. So we have those two different blue tissues, right? They're doing them both in blue. In the male and female, anytime you see this blue porous stuff, it means that that tissue fills up with blood, that tissue engorges with blood. Okay? So if penis is here, like this side versus this side, the underneath surface versus this surface. You learned anatomical terms day one of A&P 1. You probably don't remember. Tell me, what's the front of your body called? Anterior. What's the back called? Okay, so let me change it. Do you remember there's a word that means belly side and back side that's different than anterior and posterior? That in humans is the same, but in animals that are on all four, anterior's here, posterior's here, this is called something and that's called something. Do you know what this is called? Ventral. So what's the back called? Dorsal. You're going to get a kick out of this. Anatomical position. I bet Dr. Bolton got in front of you day one, pointed his toes at you, pointed his nose at you, pointed his palms at you, and said that's anatomical position. Anybody remember that? Did he tell you about the penis? He better not. Because day one, you don't be talking about the penis on day one with your brand new students, right? Anatomical position for the penis. Are you ready for this? Woo. Straight up in the air, okay? Just like that. Because this side is the sensitive side. Like your belly is very sensitive, that's ventral. It gets nerve endings from a different group than backside. I know your back can be sensitive, but it is not as sensitive as your front, okay? So why am I telling you this? Because when we see the labeled pictures, and I want everybody to know this, the blood vessels, nerves, lymphatics, the supply that keeps the penis alive is right there on that side. Tell me what surface that is. That is called dorsal. That is the dorsal surface of the penis. So those are called the dorsal blood vessels, etc. That one won't be on the test, but I'll put it on the picture because it's important that you understand the top side of the penis is dorsal and the bottom side is ventral. Okay. Let's go up to the top part and label some things. I'm going to do this like this. According to what we did on the first picture, what would we call that region of the penis? Very good, glands. So we could say all of that is the glands. Okay? What I want you to see this tissue here, the spongiosum, and I will, when it's picture time, I'll turn the lights down so you get a better picture. Goes right here. Now, I really wish on this picture they wouldn't use 2 shades of blue that are so close so that you could tell the difference, but it's what they did. So that spongiosum is just surrounding, right, the lumen of the urethra, or the urethra right there, and it goes all the way up. But look, when the spongiosum, and this is why I drew this for you, when the spongiosum gets toward the tip of the penis, it swells up, and it is what forms the glands. Okay, so this is college. I'm going to talk different to you than if you were in high school. I'm not telling you to do this, but if you have access to a penis in your world, okay, the next time that penis is erect, be kind, but find the glands and squeeze it, okay? Because you will notice that it is spongiosum. Because you can, no matter how hard that penis is, its glands is not. It is very squishy, and it is like that on purpose. It protects it. If the tip were really hard, it might hurt partners, and it might hurt you if you're the penis owner, okay? So it is spongiosum, and here's what that means. The urethra is more toward the bottom of the penis. Actually, if the penis is erect like this and you're looking at it, you will probably see the urethra bulging out, the corpus spongiosum bulging out around it. And when it gets to the tip, that is what swells up and forms the head. Okay? See those 2 columns coming down beside it on the top part of the picture, which are the eyes on this? Those are more on the top side, and there's one on each side. And what they do, and this is fascinating, you can feel this too, they go to right there, right to the head, and then they stop. They don't go any further. They go out to the glands, and then they stop, and the glands comes from down below and goes up around. So if you're squeezing here, squeezy, squeezy, and then right there, you'll feel those little points where they come to kind of a blunt end right there. Those, I'm going to draw them in for you so we can label this stuff. I'm going to do them in yellow just because it'll stand out good. And I can even... And I'm actually only going to color that one in, not the one on the other side. So tell me, what is the name of that yellow column of tissue? Can you guys tell me? And I'm going to use the plural spelling. I'm not going to use singular, even though I'm pointing at one. Corpora cavernosa. What is the name of this little blue one that I am showing you right there? There you go. Corpus spongiosum. Corpus spongiosum. Who can tell me what this was? Focus on the spelling when you practice for this test. Epididymis is not easy to spell. Okay. What letter should I put in here? I want a T. I want its name. I could put an S there. What would S stand for? Sperm, seminiferous tubule, spermatos. Remember all that stuff? Mm-hmm. Put an I for interstitial cells. That T could stand for testosterone. Oh my goodness. So many things we know. What is this tube here? That is the vas deferens. That is right at the beginning of the vas deferens. Okay. By the way, the foreskin is there. I could use this picture for it for preface, just like I could the other picture. Okay. Go ahead and snag that. So now we come to this aspect of the picture, a little bit different. Who can tell me what that tube is? Very good. Perfect pronunciation. Ureter. What is this organ? Who wants to remind us what tube this is? Yeah. What is that one and that one? Nice. Seminal vesicle on each side. You can see those. Okay. By the way, when you see this picture, now I can address something that I won't ask you on the test. Look, when the vas deferens comes up and over, it loops over the ureter. You can see that. And it comes right here. And it comes right here. But the way they've drawn that, you see it almost looks like another little seminal vesicle. It's all swollen. That part of the vas deferens is swollen. It does have a name, but I don't ever ask you. It's called an ampulla, but you're not going to be asked that, okay? But that's why it almost looks like you have 4 seminal vesicles there because it's so big. But there's a difference between the part that's connected to the vas, it's just part of the vas deferens, versus the seminal vesicles that are not connected back to the vas deferens. The little tiny ejaculatory ducts would be right through here on each side. And yeah, they would lead to the urethra. Here's our prostate gland. What are these little ones right here? The bulbourethral glands. This part here. I'm going to put that letter in it. Tell me what it is. Bulb. That is the bulb. And this part here that curves like that, it's called the crus. You will notice the crus curves outward, and it comes from this. That's that corpora that gets really firm. the corpora cavernosa on the side. It curves out and becomes the crus. This crus is very important. It goes in and it goes sideways, and that anchors the penis up in the body so that it's more stable. Okay. Ah, what is this? The urogenital diaphragm. That is the urogenital diaphragm. And that is everything you need on this picture. You do have to do some work though, because that big B in the middle stands for bulb. I could ask that. How much of the semen comes from the prostate? About 30. About 30. How much comes from the two seminal vesicles above it? About 60. About 60. Very good. Oh, this should look familiar. Here is the picture of the testes. Ah, look, I'm gonna put an eye there. Anybody remember what those cells are called? Interstitial cells. Anybody remember what the whole tube is called here? The whole tube, not the cells. Yeah. By the way, I'll label another picture for you. Okay, I'm just partially doing that. That's seminiferous tubule. What part is this? The lumen. What cells would be there if this were mature? Sperm cells. Okay. This is more mature. You're seeing some cells in there. Wow. These little guys were spermatocytes. We'll label them on the next picture. I wanted to orient you to that first. Now we're going to go back to this. See, here's the testes right here. But these little yellow tubes, those are the seminiferous tubules. Okay. Now, a lot of people look at the labeled version of this, and when they're on a test, they forget to read the question. And the labeled version, let me show you what it does. It labels that little white tissue between them. And that white tissue between them is called a septum. I'm going to be asking you about the septum on the test. I want you to know that those yellow tubes, about 900 coiled tubes in the testes, are the seminiferous tubules. Okay? And what is produced in those seminiferous tubules? That is where sperm are produced. Okay? They will also do this. Say, oh, that one tubule is in a region between two septums, and we call it a lobule. I'm not going to ask you about the lobule. So there's a septum, there's a lobule, and there's a seminiferous tubule. A lot of people miss this on the test because they're not reading the question. They're just looking at that general area, and I guess lobule is easier to spell, or septum's easier to spell, and so they don't put seminiferous tubule. If I point there, I would say name that yellow structure or tube or something like that so that you know, okay? But you only will know that if you read the question. You guys will know it because you're here, so you ain't going to be putting lobule or septum, all right? It's that simple. Right here, you can see those tubes go back and connect to a little structure there. That structure has an interesting name. And it's called the reedy testis. The reedy testis. It could be on your test. This is the first part of the epididymis. So I'm just going to go epi because I don't have room to spell it there. They really call this the head, this part the body, and this part over here the tail. I abbreviated very briefly to show you there's a head, a body, and a tail. I'm not going to be asking you that. Okay? It's all, if I point to that, it is the epididymis. Right over here, though, if I get that out of the way so you can see. You can see that here it was real curly, and it gets smaller and less curly, and eventually gets thin. Then we can call that. Anybody remember what that epididymis becomes when it straightens out? Oh, so we're going to, very good point.
Sorry.
No, very good point. This, in our pictures that are labeled, they call it ductus deferens too. One, in healthcare, they're always going to call it the vas deferens. With humans, they almost always call it that. It is also the ductus deferens. In biology on animals, we almost always call it ductus deferens, okay? But same thing, it's the same thing. We use vasectomy for the procedure, so I use vas deferens for the name to help link it in your mind, all right? What is that vas deferens carrying? Don't say sperm. Semen. What is less than 1% of the semen? Sperm. But here, if you took it here, there'd be a lot more than 1% for sperm because that's not a lot of fluid there. So there's a lot of sperm here. It's when it mixes with the other that it's only the 1% or so, okay? Up here, super important. That is a cord that goes down to each of the testes to keep them alive. They have to live to be able to make sperm. That whole thing is called the spermatic cord, okay? The spermatic cord. It is important that you know what is in it. What do you think the blue and red things are? Yes, blood vessels. By the way, there's capillary networks too, okay? Arteries, veins, capillaries, blood vessel network. Enough. What is this coming up and going in there? The vas deferens goes up in there. Oh, so the vas deferens, that's where it comes down into the testes from the body. What do you think that yellow thing up in there is? It's a nerve or group. There's various. Anyway, it's a nerve. And look what I'm going to do for you to help you out. They should have done this. What would be there that's that color? Nice. Lymphatics. So the spermatic cord contains blood vessels, nerves, and lymphatics. Okay? Blood vessels, nerves, and lymphatics, which keep the testes, the epididymis, keep it all alive and healthy. What they're not showing you that they should have is this. There's a muscle right there. There is a muscle that's up there that can contract and can pull the testes up against the body. Okay? I didn't leave no room. I don't know where I'm going to write its name. I'll put it here in a little red box. And we'll go, I don't know how to do it because I have to use this for something else. Let me change my box then. Make my box go here. That muscle, sorry about that, that muscle in the spermatic cord is called the cremaster muscle. That's a funny name if you think about it. But it is. Tell me what that means. All right, ready, guys? On three. 1, 2, 3. Raise them up. Drop them down. Raise them up. Drop them down. Are you doing it? Don't tell us. No, no, no. That is skeletal muscle. You have conscious control over that. If you raise them up and you can't drop them down, you want to learn how to relax a little bit. Because it's important to be able to relax different parts of the body. Okay? Sometimes if you're not used to doing that, you can raise them up and they get stuck. You're like, I can't relax. I don't know why. Because you don't consciously think of those muscles. Okay? That, what we just did, that's kind of like a guy doing Kegel exercises. It trains those muscles. There is another muscle. Let me use a ghosted version. That is in the, what would be around this? In the scrotum. So in the scrotum, outside of those tunics, because there are tunics there. And this muscle is called the dartos muscle. You cannot control it. It does its own thing. It's the muscle of the scrotum. So tell me what kind of muscle the dartos would be. Nice, smooth. So you ever seen a little naked baby boy running around? When they're cold, that little scrotum is tiny and thick, right? Super, super thick. Because it's cold. And that's smooth muscle. And the job, one of the jobs of both of these muscles is to help regulate body temperature, or regulate, testes temperature. That should always be use this for cold. The testes, the temperature of the testes should be 3 to 5 degrees below body temperature, something like that. That's why they're outside the body. That's why they're in a sac outside the body, because they're supposed to be colder than the body. If a boy's testes don't drop and they stay up in his abdomen, that actually could cause sterility. It could cause problems with development of the sperm later if they're in there for too long. Can lead to cancer. Yeah, it's predisposes somebody to cancer. So the testes are supposed to be cooler because, here's why. The sperm can only develop properly below body temperature. If the sperm are developing in a hot environment, they will die. They will be destroyed. They will mutate, all kinds of crazy things. So, what is supposed to be lower than body temperature? What organ? Testes. Why? So the sperm can develop, okay? So if, it's a hetero couple and they're having a hard time conceiving and they're talking to the guy, what kinds of things do you think they're going to ask him? What kind of underwear do you wear? Are you a tighty-whitey dude? Got them all hugged up against your body all the time? What kind of pants do you wear? You wear tight jeans, you wear tighty whities and tight jeans, you're trapping the heat. What do you do for a living? You a truck driver? You sitting for 12 hours at a time with them trapped right there in your tighty whities and your jeans? Do you put a laptop there and type for hours on end? Because you raised the temperature, and that could kill the developing sperm. They might ask you this: you have a hot tub? Do you and the missus get in the hot tub every day after work, have some wine and stuff? Because if your hot tub is 104 degrees or above and you're in it for more than 20 minutes, you just wiped out your developing sperm on that day. This is not a birth control method. Don't be going and buying no hot tub because you're like, yay! Okay. Now, something to note. Sperm live in these tubes for a couple of months before they come out. Up to a couple months. They need to mature. Remember, we've said before, when they're first made, they're immature. That's why on that one picture is like immature sperm are here. I don't care that you tell me mature or immature, but the point is they need time to develop. Okay? So the sperm that come out, they're a little old. You know, they're at least a few weeks old because they've had to mature before they're ready. It's the developing sperm down in the seminiferous tubules that temperature would kill, and the ones that are trying to develop in the epididymis. It's not the ones that are up higher in the vas deferens. So you go getting in the hot tub, you say, I want to be safe. 30 minutes, 107 degrees, I'm killing them all. No, you ain't killing the ones that are already up in the body. Those mature ones can live at body temperature. It's the immature ones. But the idea is if people do the hot tub every day, and you kill them every day, and you've done it every day for 2 months, you probably ain't got no viable sperm or not enough viable sperm. So get this picture. This is one of my favorite pictures. I keep telling my wife someday I'm going to blow this up and I'm going to put it on our wall. Tell me what it is. That is one beautiful seminiferous tubule right in the middle with baby sharks, baby humans, baby sperm. There it is right there. What are these cells? Spermatocytes, remember that? What is this little cluster of cells? Interstitial cells. What do these cells make? Testosterone. Wow. By the way, this electron micrograph, great picture. There's a blood vessel. Oh, there's a couple little red blood cells right there. It's kind of cool. If you zoom up on it, you'll be able to see that. I want you to notice. Here's another seminiferous tubule in here. They had to dissect to get it to look that pretty, okay? Because there's tissue around them that protect them. Anyway, to me, that's a cool picture. That may be on your test. You better take a picture of it. I ain't labeling it for you. You can do that. Take a picture of that.
Well, we have to label just what it is.
So I'll show you on another picture that I already have labeled for you. Hiding in this other PowerPoint right here. Here's what you might have to label that we saw on the other one. So go ahead and get that picture in your notes now. That is exactly what we just mentioned. Seminiferous tubule, spermatocytes, interstitial cells, and oh yeah, you would never have to call them immature sperm. Just say sperm and you would be fine. Okay. What organ is that? The testes. Very good. Very good. And look, here's this picture again with the little, this time it's got the words that shows you how much is zoomed up. It's pretty cool.